Breaking news this noon time of allegations of sexual abuse in the Red Sox clubhouse. The allegations date back to 1991 when two men now say a former Red Sox clubhouse manager who has since died sexually abused them when they were teenagers. The man accused was Donald Fitzpatrick. In 2003, the team settled a lawsuit with 7 Florida men who said that Fitzpatrick molested them in the 1970s. Well, he later died in 2005.
Major League Baseball reaching a settlement in a class action lawsuit filed by minor leaguers accusing the league of violating minimum wage laws and the Fair Labor Standards Act.
It breaks my heart to see because this is the game that I've loved since I was a child. And I want to see it be the best it can possibly be. And its employees are being treated like commodities, like cattle to be traded. If they're a show cow, great, put them in the fair. Food quality is absolutely not adequate for athletic performance. Some teams were okay providing nothing but like a ham and cheese sandwich and some chips.
The competition is cutthroat. The world of kids sports is now a booming billion-dollar business where young kids are looking more like the pros. 14-year-old Ryan Brown turns heads and hits big when he's at bat. He's been playing baseball since he was 4 years old.
I play 4 hours, 5 days a week. If it weren't for baseball, I don't know what I would be doing.
But for some families, by the time college comes, there's not much money left.
It would be really nice if he would get a college scholarship to play baseball.
But only 1% of high school graduates receive an athletic scholarship, and recent studies show that athletes who specialize in one sport are prone to injuries.
Major League Baseball, America's favorite pastime. Immortalized in films like A League of Their Own and Field of Dreams.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball.
All too often, another constant has been baseball players using tobacco, especially chewing tobacco, a known cause of cancer. It's what led to the early death of Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn, who died in June of cancer in his salivary gland, a diagnosis Gwynn blamed on chewing tobacco. Baseball great Babe Ruth, also a longtime chewer, died of oral cancer.
Kids see their heroes on the field, and they want to emulate and be just like their favorite slugger or their favorite pitcher.
It's blood! What? Chewing tobacco?
Tobacco, man. 1993's The Sandlot illustrates that point.
Yeah, sure, man. All the pros do. Yeah. Gives you tons of energy, huh?
If only it were pure fiction. A June CDC report found that while smoking rates for high school students have fallen by more than half since 1999, smokeless tobacco use by students has held steady. And these groups have been waging this battle over baseball and health for years. Similar letters in 2011 and 2012 pushed the league to act.
A former professional Major League Baseball player who later appeared on the reality show Bar Rescue has been arrested and charged with the murder and attempted murder of his in-laws.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Here is YouTube video topic. Today I want to get into the topic of pure evil, the baseball industry and the Major League Baseball Industry files. Deep dive, anti-imperialism, capitalism, true crime, alleged abuse, pedophiles, big tobacco, radical struggles fought in baseball history, domestic violence, privatization of American youth sports, sweatshops, wage theft, etc. and more. So let's get started in this YouTube video topic. But before we get started, all my YouTube videos related to this topic will be on the screen right now if you'd like to check them out. So let's get started into this YouTube video topic. Communists fighting the color line, baseball players resisting owners. America's favorite pastime, has a fascinating untold history of radical struggles against racial injustice and labor exploitation. 75 years ago, Brooklyn Dodgers second baseman Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier. Most baseball fans probably know the story, which has been told numerous times in the media and in books and films. But do they know about Robinson's civil rights activism off the field? How about the attempts to integrate prior to Robinson, or the many struggles against labor exploitation before free agency was finally established in the 1970s? A lot of the players in the 1940s and 1950s were anti-union, apolitical, or afraid to get fired. However, by the late 1950s, it became clear that the owners were corporate Mongols, capitalist pigs, making a lot of money off the backs of the players, and were making about what the average school teacher made or less. They knew they weren't getting their fair share of money or profits. So in 1966, they hired Marvin Miller, a former official with the United Steelworkers Union, who the owners tried to red bait. He negotiated the first collective bargaining contract in professional sports history. He educated the players about labor history and solidarity. He beat the owners on every issue. Lastly, Danny Gardella, he was a outfielder for the New York Giants. Frustrated by the low pay he was getting from the Giants, in 1946 he jumped to the Mexican League. His salary increased from $4,500 to $10,000. The Mexican League not only paid him better, it was also racially integrated. He was one of the several Major League and Negro League players who played in Mexico. The baseball commissioner, Happy Chandler, told him and other players who jumped to Mexico that they would never play for one of their teams again and be blackballed if he played in Mexico, so he sued. He couldn't afford to pay a lawyer, so he ended up settling, but the owners were really scared that the case would be overturned to overturn the reservoir clause. That was about 20 years before Flood's case. Curt Flood should be in the Hall of Fame. He sacrificed his career when he sued the Major League Baseball. He was incredibly courageous and a great ball player too. The Hall of Fame blacklisted Marvin Miller for 30 years. He didn't get into the Hall of Fame until 2021, 9 years after his death. Curt Flood is also dead, but I hope the Hall of Fame elects him while his wife Judy is still alive. Number 2, the minor league players need to be unionized. People think minor league players are close to major league players in terms of salary, but most of them don't make actually that much. Many live in poverty while chasing their American dream. There are now efforts underway to organize these minor leagues, but it'd be great if the MLB Players Association did more to help that effort. The third thing is that Major League Baseball owns a sweatshop in Costa Rica. There are over 1 million baseballs used every season, and they're all made in Costa Rica. A few years ago, Major League Baseball bought an ownership stake in Rawlings, which owns that factory. I've talked to people in Costa Rica and they've detailed the awful conditions, including low pay and salary, serious health violations and safety issues, and job insecurity. I think Players Union has an obligation to help fix the problem by drawing more attention to it. In the 1970s, as the number of Latino baseball players increased, some players began speaking out against the capitalism caused human rights atrocities and abuses and other international issues going on and going down. Private outfielder and future Hall of Famer Roberto Clemente condemned American support for the Somoza dictatorship in Nicaragua. Pitcher Ozzie Guillen, both Venezuelans, supported Hugo Chávez. In 2013, Ordonez was elected the socialist mayor of Juan Antonio Sodero Metapopli. Their most notable designer from American policy and its war on terrorism was first baseman Carlos Delgado, the two-time All-Star who played with the Blue Jays, Florida Marlins, and New York's Mets during his 17-year career. A Puerto Rican native, was no stranger to political protests. He campaigned for years against the American naval presence in Vieques, Puerto Rico island, used for over 60 years by the U.S. military as a weapons testing ground. Remembering older residents' horror stories about explosions and health effects, Delgado believed the military was waging a form of war on the tiny island. After the Navy left, Delgado and the others called for the American government to clean up the economic, psychological, environmental mess and toll left behind, which included high rates of cancer rates on the island to the locals, pedophiles and sex abuse in the baseball scandal. Carlos Crawford was 16 in 1991 when he got a job as a clubhouse attendant at Freeland Park. His job was to pick up jerseys, clean up around the clubhouse, and run errands for players. He said it was a dream come true, and he loved his job. He got to meet famous baseball players. And the clubhouse where he went to get the ball, and that was the first time he was sexually assaulted by Donald Fitzpatrick. And according to the Associated Press, Fitzpatrick pleaded guilty to criminal charges of attempted sexual battery in 2002, admitting that he used Boston Red Sox memorabilia to lure young black clubhouse workers into private areas of the team's Florida Spring training facility where he assaulted them. He did not admit to sexual assault in any other ballparks and died and passed away in 2005 while serving out a prison sentence term in Florida for his crimes. But since then, the AP reported more than men have allegedly said they were sexually assaulted by Fitzpatrick at Freeland Park and other stadiums when the Red Sox were at home on the road. Attorney Mitchell Garibin represents 21 men, 15 of them who are black, who say they were abused by Fitzpatrick, but because of their claims to Fitzpatrick chose vulnerable children. He knew these children, where they came from, impoverished families, complicated, broken backgrounds, and were thrilled to be in the atmosphere of Major League Baseball players. Donald Fitzpatrick was clever, and his plan was to pick on the vulnerable populations, aka these children. America sold out Little League Baseball, the capitalism privatization of American youth sports. We have commodified the play of millions of children into a $19.2 billion business. Weakening programs that promise affordable sports for all children, once proud public institutions, are being privatized with many unintended consequences. Baseball is still an immensely popular game for American children. In 2020, 3.4 million children ages 6 to 12 played baseball, second to only basketball among team sports, but the percentage of American children ages 6 to 12 who play baseball has declined to 12.2% in 2020 from 16.5% in 2008. Basketball, soccer, and other team sports has also been privatized, but none so aggressively as baseball itself, the most expensive of the team sports. And baseball seems to have a higher burnout rate, as evidenced by decreased participation as children grow older. Among children aged 13 to 17 years of age, baseball participation dropped off by more than 16% in 2020 from the previous year to $1.8 million, while basketball slightly gained participations, growing from 2.5% to 3.6 million. The result, the United States baseball is becoming a mostly white country club sport for rich upper-class families to consume, like a snorkeling vacation or a round of golf. The way it's going, all pro players are going to be rich white kids from the suburbs. In the United States, baseball is becoming a mostly white country club sport for upper-class families to consume. Baseball started as a folk game with kids playing in parks and on the streets with all different kinds of rules, said Tom Gilbert, author of How Baseball Happened, a history of the game's development in the 19th century. But obviously that's not happening anymore, with part-time coaches making only a few $1,000s a season, the equivalent of $10 an hour if you include driving to practices and games. Club owners can easily make several $100,000 a year. The club elite team included only a couple of black players, and its overall demographics were typical of white American suburbs. Another source of revenue for owners is private lessons, which can cost up to $150 an hour. Parents are told they are needed year-round if their child is to play in college. That is why private clubs own or rent indoor facilities and gyms. The intense focus on individual development is another practice borrowed from professional baseball, where players now work year-round in specialized gyms The intense specialization pushed in many parents is a danger to children. They need freedom to discover where they enjoy or turn it into living out someone else's dream or agenda. There's so much money in private youth sports companies that former major league professionals are now investing in clubs instead of looking for jobs in professional baseball. In 2019, the average salary for a minor league baseball player ranged from $6,000 in single A to $15,000 in triple A. To put that in perspective, the U.S. poverty line was $12,000 in 2019. According to the United States Department of Human Health Services, around 86% of minor leagues are currently below the poverty line, while the other 14% are hovering right above it. Since 1976, the minimum salary in the MLB has increased by around 2,500%, while minimum salary for the MILB has increased just 70% since 1976. Some players have to resort to working a second job, rationing their meals, and just to make these ends meet. In 2019, Minnesota Twins pitcher Randy Dubot was working as a driver for rideshare companies because he wasn't able to live off his minor league salary. Not only are minor league players not paid living wages, many struggle to find proper housing and experience terrible conditions during traveling, all while the MLB and its owners and the Capitalist Pigs are exploiting players for capitalism profits. MLB settles minor leagues players' wage and hour class action wage theft lawsuit for $185 million. Almost $120 million from the total settlement is expected to be shared among an estimated 23,000 current and former players, with an average payment of about $5,000 to $5,500. The Major League Baseball has agreed to pay $185 million to current and former minor league baseball players to settle a federal class action lawsuit alleging wage theft violations of minimum wage laws. The lawsuit was first filed in 2014 by a baseman/outfielder, Aaron Sandin, a 10th round pick of the Marlins in 2009, who retired in 2013, and two other retired players who've also been low-round selections, Kansas City infielder Michael Libro and San Francisco pitcher Oliver Alday. They claimed violations of the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act and state minimum wage and overtime requirements for a work week they estimated at around 50 to 60 hours. And the inadequate pay of the MILB players is not due to a lack of resources in MLB. In 2019, Major League Baseball brought in $10.7 billion to pay every minor league player $60,000 a year. For some players, $60,000 is the difference between living on their own apartment or sleeping on the floor of someone else's. So why do MLB owners choose to not pay their players a living wage? Capitalism greed. In 2018, Congress passed the Save America's Pastime Act, which exempts minor league players from federal labor laws, essentially allowing MLB teams to pay minor leaguers below minimum wage. The reason owners don't pay minor league players is not because they can't, but because they'd rather have the extra money in their own pockets to spend on what they want, instead of it being in the pockets of someone who needs it more than them. In the minor league, housing can be a very big problem for players. In 2014, Derek Hayhurst wrote about his experiences in the minor leagues in an article for Bleacher Report. He wrote that in AAA, after 6 years of playing in the minors, I slept on an air mattress in a living room floor of a 2-bedroom Portland apartment because I had the least service time of the 3 players who were living there. One of us slept on a sleeping bag on the floor. The last time Hayhurst played in Portland was in 2008, when I spoke to Oakland A's top prospect Jesus Lazaro about his time in the minor leagues. He said, "High A, one of the most difficult times when we were finding housing. We had 4 guys sleeping on air mattresses on the floor of a 2-bedroom apartment. From 2008 to 2018, when Lazaro first played, High A housing conditions have gotten seemingly worse. As the cost of living crisis continues to rise and minor league pay stays the same, minor leaguers face many challenges when it comes to housing. When a player gets traded to a new city, he has to figure out a way to cover the rent for his previous situation and then find a new place to live in the next city, all while being paid poverty-level wages. In any other work environment, these conditions would be deemed unacceptable, unfair, and severe, and MILB is considered the way of life. There are no easy days in the minor leagues. During spring training, players do not receive a paycheck, only getting $120 a week in meal money, for the players have to adhere to strict rules about staying in shape and being healthy. This is not enough money to eat healthy meals every single day. Instead, a lot of minor league players that are invited to spring training are forced to either eat fast food all week, ration the healthy food they do get, or sneak out for food of the complex. It's hard for minor league players to be taken seriously when they try to fight for better things. They are often dismissed when they complain about these issues because they are living the American dream or play baseball as a job. But for a lot of these players, this isn't the dream. It's simply their job. They rely on their skills to make a living, just like almost everyone else. So there's absolutely no reason for them to be treated like they aren't workers. I hope that the minor league players unionize sometime in the near future, because if not, they will continue to be exploited for profit by MLB and its owners. A failed system, a corrupt process exploits Dominican baseball prospects. Clubs are reaching verbal agreements with players in their early teens with alarming frequency, and longtime player, agent, Hugo Chávez and others say that corruption in the system, including a scheme in which some of the trainers pay MLB team scouts under the table, is more prevalent and widespread than in the past. MLB has allowed the industry to spiral out of control, said Gardella, who co-founded the Dominican Prospect League in 2009 with a mission to improve the evaluation process of amateurs in his native land. A number of officials for major league clubs agree with Gardella that the situation is untenable, with one high-ranking team executive referring to amateur player situation in the Dominican Republic as a cesspool. A number of trainers who serve as a combination of agents, mentors, and coaches for young Latin American amateurs who are fed up with the current situation. Eddie Fronta, a longtime trainer based in the Dominican Republic's northern region of Cabo, calls the signing process a failed system. Latin American players have suffered and continue to suffer through great inequalities, said Capitalism, who works for the Untold agency. Not only do they typically sign for less despite similar skill compared to American players, but they are also subjected to an evaluation and signing system that does not protect them in any way. It's time for all of us in positions in effort to change and do what is right, independent of the interests we might hold. Caballero says the kickback schemes proliferated during the coronavirus pandemic. He and other agents said they made the league aware of the unethical dealings and findings, but the league has not taken any action whatsoever. MLB has tolerated the chaos. Caballero and some club officials believe, in part to convince teams and trainers, that draft is the best way to solve many of the issues in the international market. Other controversies in baseball include tobacco and baseball have a long shared history. Over a century ago, Big Tobacco began heavily investing in tactics to link tobacco with baseball. These tactics included in-game promotions, stadium advertising, and the creation of collectible baseball cards that were included inside packs of cigarettes. Many early baseball players smoked cigarettes off the field, but used chewing tobacco while playing. Players soon discovered that chewing tobacco had baseball-specific benefits. It kept the mouth moist with saliva despite the dusty environment, and pitchers used the juice from chewing tobacco to create the notorious spitball, a pitching tactic banned in 1920 in which a pitcher applies saliva to the baseball. Many people may not know that baseball cards are rooted in the tobacco industry in history. In 1912, the tobacco company W.T. Blackwell & Co., manufacturers of Bull Durham Tobacco created a successful in-game promotion by installing branded billboards at most league stadiums and promising that the baseball player who hit the signs would receive $50, equivalent of more than $1,000 today. In the 1910s and decades after, a trip to the Major League Baseball park often included a good view of a tobacco ad, often above the scoreboard exits. This method of advertising became in handy and especially valuable for tobacco companies after the 1971 when tobacco commercials were prohibited and banned from TV and appearing on television. As baseball season gets underway, this year more than half Major League Baseball's 30 stadiums are tobacco-free as a result of state and federal and local laws. Yet amid this progress, new oral nicotine pouches are gaining ground among athletes, replacing smokeless tobacco products like chew, dip, etc. The players have historically, although some baseball players claim they are not using oral nicotine pouches as a tool to quit smokeless tobacco, which has a long history with the sport, the FDA has not authorized the sale of any oral nicotine pouch products for help with quitting. When athletes use these products on the field or during interviews, they are acting as unpaid smoke salespeople for the tobacco industry, which can influence the young fans. Smokeless tobacco products such as dip and chewing tobacco have been popular among baseball players for decades, but starting in 2016, the MLB prohibited new players from using any smokeless tobacco product. Many players supported the ban, especially after the deaths of player Bill Turtle and coach Tony Guillen from oral cancer, raised awareness about the dangers of using smokeless tobacco. Chewing tobacco eventually faded in popularity among the American public, but remained popular on the baseball field. And to this day, smokeless tobacco products, mostly dip, are still associated with the game. Major League Baseball and its problem with domestic violence and assault. Prior to 2015, clubs didn't take any disciplinary action against players accused of or arrested for domestic violence, with the exception of the Boston Red Sox suspending Will Cargo in 1997. His suspension was only 8 games despite his arrest. In October of 2015, Aldrez Chapman's girlfriend told the police he had done bad things to her and pushed her against the wall against her will, and alleged that he fired 8 gunshots in the garage of his Miami home. Chapman avoided charges but was suspended by the league for 30 games, which was the first time a player was suspended for domestic violence since Cardillo nearly 20 years earlier. Rob Manfred put Trevor Bogler on leave, renewing the decision weekly as Bonner was being investigated for alleged sexual assault. Barr's accuser requested temporary ex parte domestic violence restraining order. Before the accusation in California, another woman in Ohio filed a protective restraining order against Barr while he was still playing for the Cincinnati Reds. Fans of Bonner flocked to social media with the opinion that the victim, the woman, who did not sue for financial gain, just wanted to remain anonymous, was only out to get money and fame. This is a textbook example of victim shaming, especially when a high-profile athlete is involved. And finally, someone currently in the Hall of Fame ballot has quite a dark past. Omar Venquil has appeared on 7 ballots despite knowledge of sexual assault and domestic violence have been shown and date back to 2015. While his votes are currently starting to decline, he's down a historic year over amount. It's disturbing to know that there are people still include him on their ballots despite allegations going back at least a decade. Danny Sturfentine murder case. Tahoe couple shot by former MLB player's son-in-law. Court documents say Stephanie's career in the MLB ended after he was suspended for 50 games after the 2007 season for testing positive for performing enhancing drugs. This case started years ago when John Taffer from Bar Rescue visited the Bullpen Bar in Sparks, Nevada. The Bullpen Bar was owned by Dan Savina, a former professional baseball player. According to the promotional video for the show, he had roughly lost $14 million through a series of bad investments and a divorce settlement before convincing his parents to take out a $240,000 loan against their house to buy the bullpen bar in 2013. At the time, he was in debt, $300,000 in debt. And his family had noticed a change in his personality during that time. Years later after this situation, court documents allege former Major League Baseball player Dan shot and killed his father-in-law and shot his mother-in-law during a home burglary in 2021. The father-in-law died at the scene, and the mother-in-law died after having relearned how to walk and talk and eat. It was alleged that he had used a .22 caliber firearm in the murder. He's also facing charges of special circumstances for lying in wait, and both of them are being accused of attempted murder in connection with the shooting of Wood. The documents alleged the attempted murder was willful, deliberate, and premeditated, aka first-degree murder.